Hello, Zero Books readers. It's me again, Douglas Lane. And in this video, I'll be talking about the new Joker movie, not in order to take a side in the culture war. I don't know if the movie is terribly reactionary and supportive of incels, or whether it strikes a blow for freedom of expression against oppression, or exposes all the ills of society. But I'll be talking about it because it seems to me that talking about movies has taken the place of politics today. Now, as a publisher of critical theory, I should be the last person to suggest that movies are politically neutral. And in fact, I would never say that. Critiquing popular culture is a big part of what we do. For example, in our upcoming title, Ideology in the Virtual City, author John Bales makes a concerted effort to discover the political significance of a variety of video games. And he justifies his search by asserting that, quote, we can gain valuable insights into the social psychology of the historical moment by examining pop culture, end quote. The central claim of his book is that by studying video games, we can find out about ideologies in society that attach people to the status quo. I tend to agree. However, many people seem to treat this effort to gain insights into our social psychology as if it is the beginning and the end of political struggle. People think that coming to the right conclusion about this superhero movie is a moral imperative. The arguments around Joker range from concerns that this violent movie will encourage mass shootings, specifically mass shootings perpetrated by disaffected white fuckboys, to proclamations that the movie is socially progressive because it holds a mirror up to society and removes the romantic aura that many films create around violence. The unstated assumption behind all the criticism is that movies and other popular stories work to provide moral instruction, and that the wrong movie can produce antisocial behaviors and even create the wrong social and structural norms in society. It is as if people believe that society is mass culture. People seem to think that we don't live in a society wherein our material needs and social desires are mediated by the state and by capital, but rather think that the world is mediated by ideologies condensed down into images. It almost seems as though the chattering classes are all pro-situationist. The Situationist International was a radical theory and art group that began in Paris in the late 50s, helped to spark the May 1968 uprisings, which inspired around 2 million French workers to go on strike, and then dissolved in 1972 after a series of purges and splits. The main idea that directed the SI's activities was this one. In societies where industrial production prevails, life presents itself as an immense accumulation not of commodities, but of spectacles. Everything that was directly lived has moved away into a representation. In fact, those last two lines are from Guy Debord's situationist book, The Society of the Spectacle. But the first two lines in that book aren't from Debord, but rather the critique begins with a quote from Feuerbach, from his The Essence of Christianity. Quote, but certainly for the present age, which prefers the sign to the thing signified, the copy to the original, representation to reality, the appearance to the essence, illusion only is sacred, truth profane. Nay, sacredness is held to be enhanced in proportion as truth decreases and illusion increases, so that the highest degree of illusion comes to be the highest degree of sacredness. To understand the meaning of Feuerbach's quote and just why Debord chose to open his book with it, we should first put the quote in context and then consider how the meaning of the quote is altered when decontextualized or put into a more universal position. Feuerbach's preface to the second edition of his book, The Essence of Christianity, was written as a response to the critical reaction to the first edition. Specifically, Feuerbach is accusing his critics of embracing the nihilism or emptiness that they charged him with propounding. By claiming that Feuerbach's humanist interpretation of religion was atheist or negative, Feuerbach's critics were embracing an empty sign of divinity. They were embracing the trappings of religion rather than taking hold of the essence of Christianity, which Feuerbach believed was mankind's divine nature.
What is Christianity?
What is Christianity?
It's the Holy Spirit.
It's the Holy Spirit.
What is the Holy Spirit?
What is the Holy Spirit?
It's an egalitarian community of believers
It's an egalitarian community of believers
who are linked by love for each other.
who are linked by love for each other.
By starting off with this quote, Debord is indicating that it is not merely those who represent the remnants of religion in the modern world who prefer the sign to the thing signified, but that secular society itself prefers to embrace what is empty and negative, rather than face the positive power that might be taken up by revolutionary action. His book, The Society of the Spectacle, is Debord's attempt to explicate how the culture of the false and empty, the culture of abdication and submission, is promulgated. However, it seems to me that by remaining focused on what is false or merely ideological in society, Debord was too fixated on the level of appearance. In his critique of the Situationist International, the French communization theorist Gilles Dauvé wrote that throughout the Society of the Spectacle, Debord remained at the level of circulation, and that his critique lacked an analysis of the necessary moment of production, of productive labor. What nourishes capital is not consumption, as Debord leads one to understand, but the formation of value by labor. This move away from Marx's critique of political economy from his value theory puts Debord in the same category as most of the post-war Marxists left, as I've pointed out in previous videos, such as the third episode of We Live in a Society, and in our series on Zizek's Sublime Object of Ideology. Given that this is such a common mistake, it's worth exploring just how it arises. Just why is it that the move to understand the connection between capitalism as a form of productive activity and capitalism as a culture or a set of ideological norms appears to inexorably lead away from an understanding of capitalism? To ask the question differently, just why and how did the 20th century critics of capitalism become captured within the spectacle? It would be easy enough, if time-consuming, to point to a lineage of thinkers who held certain conceptions in common. For instance, to note that Debord's one-time mentor, Cornelius Castoriadis, explicitly rejected what he called Marx's production paradigm. But this approach and any attendant attempt to discredit these sorts of arguments would merely lead me to confirm Marx's original critique of political economy and leave me in the same place that I started. Perhaps I should risk making the same mistake that Debord and others made. That is, I should attempt to discover the error by connecting the labor theory of value to a theory of culture, but from a different angle or from a different vantage point than theorists like Debord, Adorno, and Castoriadis came from. What I'll want to discover is not only how particular attitudes and ideas arise out of the mode of production, but rather how and why the culture produced by capitalism has been taken up as a foundation or the source of power in society. The first clue to a solution can be found by examining my reason for asking this sort of question. When I seek out the ideas that form the foundations for power in society, and when I critique this effort by positing that the foundations for power are not merely ideological but are material as well, I'm already starting an attempt to radically change the social order. Given that this is the case, I should understand that the question of whether society is strictly ideological or has a material foundation is primarily a problem for revolutionaries. This means that I need not only look to a collection of mere philosophers to find the source of the problem, but rather I should look to the history of revolutionary struggle to find an answer. In Lenin's A Talk with Defenders of Economism, I find that the question of whether social life arises organically out of the material conditions or whether ideology plays a definitive role is recast as a question of spontaneity versus planning, or as a question of economism and tailism as opposed to a vanguard leadership delivering socialist consciousness from outside the working class. When considered as a question of a split between tailism and vanguardism, we can see that the frame that came out of revolutionary struggle presupposed the primacy of ideology. That is, when framed as a question of political organizing and the formulation of political demands, the question of both what ideas should dominate and who gave the revolutionary project legitimacy arose. In the battle around leadership and party formation, replaced the struggle to alter the material foundations of society. Despite that history, or maybe in light of that history, I think the project for the left has to be finding politics again. And by that I mean not just electoral politics, but the more radical or revolutionary politics of transformation, which means that we'll have to side with Lenin, but hopefully at the same time transcend this split between spontaneity and planning. What that means is that we'll have to bring the working class together to struggle for a new kind of production, a new mode of production, rather than simply to struggle for political power in and of itself. And in order to start that project, I think we have to begin with the admission that we don't yet have a full conception of where we want to go or what the new society will be based upon. And perhaps the development of that new foundation, that new mode of production, will inspire the working class to make a revolutionary leap and something more than a radical gesture.
Great Scott, right over the wall! The devil, he sprung himself!
Until next time, I'll see you at the movies. Thanks for watching this Zero Books video. If you enjoyed it, subscribe to this channel and click on the notifications bell so that you'll be alerted whenever we release a new video. You should also consider supporting us on Patreon. Our patrons get access to our Inside Zero Books podcast every week and can get access to the Zero Books Book Club and help us to continue making online content from the left.